Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and you are getting a pre-recorded show on this one here because I'm actually traveling. I'm at a place where I know that I'm not going to be able to do a show, so this show has been pre-recorded, and unfortunately I couldn't have Alejandro Rojas on for UFO news because it would be outdated by the time that he would be on, and so it's just myself and a great guest, Jeremy Ray from Colorado. He was on Hangar 1. He was a co-host on Hangar 1. He's a Star Team investigator for MUFON. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things, his own experiences and much more. It's a regular show as far as time goes. And I want to thank everyone that helps out and supports the show. Anyone can do that. And the information's over on podcastufo.com. So this show also will be running, of course, on KGRA Radio. And at the regular time slot, that's 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday. And also, it's going to be on the Dark Matter Digital Network as well. And another radio station, I keep asking for more information on that, but it does run on that as well. So, and for the YouTube listeners, it will be posted at some point on YouTube, but of course not the regular time slot. So that's it for me, and I'm welcoming you to the show, Jeremy. How are you?
Doing good. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, it's good wherever by the
Wherever,
time this gets
correct?
posted. Yes. Now I met you at the MUFON Symposium down in Cherry Hill, and that was a real blast. And I know you're a good friend of Tony and Angelino and Ben Moss. So that scares me right there, actually.
Well,
No,
they're
they're great
crazy
guys.
guys. I love them.
Yeah, yeah.
Had
So
some adventures together.
yeah, yeah, they're a lot of fun. So hey, can you tell for the person that doesn't know who you are, basically, can you tell just explain who you are and how you get involved in well, how you got involved in UFOs is a whole nother story. We'll talk about
That's a
that as
long
well.
story.
But
Yeah. I joined MUFON in 2000. Oh my God, how long has it been? 2006. And I joined to volunteer to be a UFO investigator because I had my own personal experiences growing up, and I wanted to learn about what other people were experiencing. And that's where I started in California, and I was investigator there for about 3 years, and then I moved to Texas, and I was an investigator there for a while, and then I moved to Denver. So I've hopped around states
hmm
and always been with MUFON. There was a time back in 2008 where there was this project called the SIP project, where Robert Bigelow from Bigelow Aerospace came in and started funding UFO research.
Yep.
I was a part of that, and that was very interesting. And then later on down the road, I was asked to be on Hangar One, the UFO files, and that's actually where I met Tony and Ben, because I was in Texas during the time and they were in Virginia, so MUFON scattered everywhere.
Right.
I probably would have never met him if maybe bumped into him at a symposium like yourself, but we hit it off pretty well on the set.
Uh-huh. So where in California were you for a while?
Northern California,
Oh, where?
Sacramento,
Yeah.
Sacramento.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Uh,
I lived north of there for in Tiburon. I don't know if you know where that is. Sausalito, Tiburon, you know that
Sausalito,
area,
yeah.
Mill Valley. And so the reason I brought that up is because I know that California has the most sightings in the United States. Also, by far, it has to this show is the number one listening state. Of course, it's a big population there. But California is one, New York's two. Of course, those are high populated states. But there are a lot of UFO sightings there. I mean, a lot, and so that must have kept you pretty busy.
it was actually probably the most real UFO sightings I've seen was in Sacramento area, and I'm talking like right off I-5 North, right
Yep.
on the highways. A lot of the sightings, if you look at a map, I-5 runs north and south.
Right.
The subdivision neighborhoods that are right adjacent to it are these people reporting UFOs. And I remember talking to a couple of UFO investigators about it, and we were just trying to figure out why. the concentration of sightings on that major highway,
Hmm.
and some people came, somebody came up with the idea that maybe they just follow the road, you know. That we can't solve that one. It's just it's highly unusual. I've actually done some sky fishing in Sacramento, where
What
I've
is
caught.
that exactly?
It's where you have a high concentration of sightings that people are reporting, and so
Uh-huh.
it's kind of like fishing. You set up cameras, um, you plug it into a wall, make sure that, and then you just change the tapes out. Um, Back in the day, I was using tapes, so it's been a
Okay.
while.
Uh-huh.
And then after that, you go through the tedious process of going through it and screening it, going
Oh,
through everything to see if you caught anything.
you may not see something with the eye, naked eye,
Right.
but you might see it on film. Is that kind
Yes,
of how
sir.
you mean? Yeah,
Well, or you can walk away
I see.
and just
Yeah, I
film
mean, it'd
that
be kind of boring, just to.
very, but it's the hunt, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, and actually kind of learned from doing all this because I was kind of a noob investigator back then. An insect might fly up in front of your camera
Yeah.
and it's not focused right, and it looks like it's far away and it looks like it's hovering. So you kind of learn. It was a learning process for me to do that. I did that for about 4 or 5 months, and I've caught a couple of strange things that made me think, wow, these things are up here all the time. We never look up,
Hmm.
and we're always looking down at our phones and stuff. But
I thought I have these kind of weird thoughts sometimes. I can't help it, but like
sure,
I have a observation deck at my house and a telescope, and I go out there every once in a while, and sometimes I sit on the chair and just look out. It's overlooking the mountains and everything, but at night, I can see the Milky Way. It's really a clear sky where I am in Maine, and I sometimes think, I wonder what is the weirdest thing in time that's gone over here. I mean, because I'm just there a little teeny fraction of a moment, and but if you were stationed out there every single night, what would you see? You'd probably see something unusual, because in my area there have been some sightings, and I haven't seen anything here, but a neighbor said they saw a triangle, fly over, and they said it was small, but it was definitely a triangle. It was small because it was so high, they thought, but I don't know. As far as
yeah,
sightings, there are some in my area, but so did you actually? I know I would really like to talk about your childhood sighting when you were 16, but when you were in the Sacramento area, did and you were doing this filming, did you actually have sightings as well, or just things you found on film?
sightings and caught some things on film that are not explosive, but um, I actually during I think it was year 2007. I don't know what was going on that year, but I would call that the year of UFOs during my time at MUFON.
Hmm.
Sightings were off the hook. I was seeing strange things. I was out there, you're out there trying to catch it, and I've actually had actually it wasn't at my place where I was sky fishing. I was on a case, and this guy kept. It was in the Laguna area. It's the south part of Sacramento, and he kept saying he was catching these UFOs every day, and he was catching them on film. And some of the stuff he had seemed very interesting. Some of it was kind of questionable. You can't really tell what it was. So I went over to his house and set up my own cameras in
Hmm.
his backyard, and we were out there talking, trying to see if anything. I never noticed it until I took the video footage home, but there was like this saucer. It looked like two pie plate. I mean, like a pie plate stacked on top of each other, zipped right into the view, and it just goes like this, zip, and then disappears. Right. And when
Uh-huh.
you slow it down and you look at it, you could see it going like this while it's moving. I mean, it's like
Huh.
so fast, but it almost looks like it's riding a wave
Wow.
when you slowed it down, and it stopped. And even when I zoomed back out on the camera, you can still see the object out there as a dot. And when I zoomed back in, but the crazy thing about it is, I never noticed it was there. Neither did he. Um, Very silver metallic, like what's the stuff you see in most of those videos you see in Mexico. And that was pretty interesting when you're out there doing something and you catch something, but you don't even notice that it was there. And I was always kind of curious. Did they know that we were out there trying to find them, or does this happen all the time in this area? So
Yeah.
you want to spend more time setting up more cameras and see if you can catch more. But it was a dead end. But I did catch something very strange at the guy's house. So
Wow.
I don't.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
there's a lot of people working on UFO detection and that stationary cameras and with other equipment to take readings. And I know Chris O'Brien has something in the works. Then there's of course Mark D'Antonio working on something. So hopefully something will happen. And I know there's also that computer program that anyone can download, and I forget exactly the name of that, where you can basically set your camera to your webcam. I don't know. I've heard something about that. Alejandro Rojas was talking about it. And as far as the sighting I had was actually in California, that got me interested into this whole topic. And um, it was 2006. I say that, but I was working a lot. If I can get the date, I mean, it would be hard to believe if I got the date wrong, if it could be 2007. But I was doing a lot of work in the Carmel Valley area, and I was actually relaxing in Carmel Valley at a neighbor's ranch, and had a disc come right over me with like a blue glow, and basically stopped, and then moved off toward Monterey, and I called the police department because I didn't know. I had absolutely no idea that there was a place online you could go and report something. So I called the police department. They put me on hold, and the woman was real sarcastic. And I basically hung up 15 minutes later. I didn't wait any longer. So, but that my sighting is kind of bland, but it's definitely unexplainable. I mean, I just was looking up, and I've said this a number of times when I talk about it. The most let's see, bizarre thing I could say about that sighting at the time was, wow, this thing is moving. There's absolutely no noise. And I didn't know that was part of what a lot of other people would say too until I started looking into it. And I go, wow. So it's not unusual that there was no noise. So yeah, their propulsion, whatever it is that we're seeing, their propulsion is hard to imagine what it is. If even if it's not something else, some people think it's something we haven't thought of yet, that we're actually seeing. Who knows?
yeah, I thought that option too.
Yeah, yeah. So let's see. We're going to be taking a break in a little while here, but can you? We're about halfway through the first segment. Can you talk about your childhood sighting? Because
So
I listened
that was
to
probably.
I listened to it on another show, and it's really fascinating.
Oh yeah, sure. It was March the 20th, 1996. I'll never forget that date for the rest of my life. Not life changing. I was walking over to a friend's house. It was spring break, and I was 16 at the time, but my buddy had a license in a pickup truck, so we were going to go down to the beach and do what everybody does on spring break in Texas. It's South Padre Island. It's where everybody goes. But anyway, just to say that didn't happen because this UFO screwed up my whole spring break vacation. I wasn't going nowhere. But so I was walking through the neighborhood and I came around a corner and it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So the sun's like kind of in this direction. And I looked up and there was this object that was under the sun. It was bright. I could sketch it and draw it for you, but it was basically oval shaped like this and it had these things coming out. So I stood there for about 5 minutes. It was a long 5 minutes trying to figure out what this was, and I couldn't figure out what it was. It was about 100 feet off the ground, so I got a pretty good look at it. It's just when I was following the leading edge of the lines, it was becoming more transparent, so it was almost like it was invisible.
Hmm.
The best way I can describe it is like if you see the sunlight hit the chrome of your bumper, when you're walking in the parking lot and how it follows you,
Yeah.
how it looks. That's how bright it was. It was brighter than the sun, but it didn't hurt your eyes to look at it.
Ah,
It's kind of strange.
that is.
So I said, this is highly unusual. I'm going to get a grown up to tell me what this is so I can go on about my day. So I started ringing doorbells, getting people out of the house. Um, the first neighbor, I never met him before. His name was Dick Gons. He came out. He didn't have a shirt on, and I introduced myself, and I said, "Hi, my name is Jeremy Ray. I'm your neighbor down the street." Blah blah. He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I've seen you mow the yard." I said, "Yeah, well, I was just walking through. I'm sorry to bother you, but I was just walking through, and I see this strange thing, and I can't figure out what it is." And I'm pointing to it, and he interrupts me, and goes, "Oh my God!" and then goes back inside and closes the door. And I was like, "That's a little eccentric. I'll go ring another doorbell. I'll get somebody out here to talk to me." So I start to leave his yard, and he comes out with clothes on, and he's got a camera, and his wife's with him, and they're grabbing sunglasses. So I mean, he just looked at the object and went, "Oh my God," and then
Yeah.
didn't even talk to me. Went
Yeah.
in. So I started thinking, well, they've been on this planet longer than me. They'll tell me what this is. What is this? And basically, I said, "Do you know what this is?" And he's shaking his head. He goes, "No, I don't know what this is, but whatever this is very, very special, Jeremy. And we're going to try to get a picture of it." And so it was kind of interesting. So I got some grown-ups now freaking out, and I'm the one that's being calm.
Mm.
So I usually don't see things like this. So I'm just standing there, and he's winding up this little camera. It's like a disposable camera that you used to buy at the store. I think they still sell those things, those Kodak disposable
Oh yeah.
cameras.
Hmm.
How much time do I have on the clock?
Oh yeah. We got plenty of time.
Okay. So anyway, he goes up to take the picture, the first picture. But let me back up. Before he did, I started to walk forward. The object started to back up, and he said that, "Oh, hey, it's moving, it's moving, it's moving." And I found that interesting. So I backed up, and the object started coming forward. And when I moved across the street, it followed me across the street. And when I moved back over to Dick, it followed me right over to Dick. So Dick was like, "Just be still so we can get a picture." As soon as he brought the camera back up to take a picture, here's the sun, and here's the object, right? It floated, it went up into the sun to where we couldn't get a picture. I
Oh.
could see the leading things going like this, but you couldn't see the main object. So I thought it was going to leave, and I said, "Dick, put the camera down." And as soon as he brought it down to the side, the object dropped back to the original position of where it was at. By that time, we knew it was under some kind of intelligent control. And so we were all standing there gaping. And I was thinking, I need to get more eyewitnesses. So I went over, I flanked it. I ran around the back side. Actually, I tried to back up so the object would go over them so they could look up to see what it was. But it stopped before it went over them.
Hmm.
So so they were standing here. I backed up. It was following me, but then it stopped. It never would go over anybody. So that's when I flanked around and rang Mrs. Ladwick's doorbell. And she came out, and I said, "You're not going to believe this, but we don't know what this is. And we think it's a UFO. Keep in mind, we've been out here for about 15 minutes watching this thing."
It's
And
amazing that long.
that long.
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, busy day. There were cars driving through the neighborhood. I remember tapping on someone's. They slowed down, wondering why people are in the road. I remember saying, I said, "Look up, look up," and the lady's just looking at me like I'm crazy, like, "What's wrong with this kid?" Nobody even looked up. It was just right there. But I think I had 2 cars go through the neighborhood during that time. Uh, but yeah, Miss Ladwick, totally went freaked out, said, "Oh my God," and walked straight towards the UFO. And she got under it. And when she did, that's when it took off. And
Really.
now you talk about being quiet, right? I want
Hmm.
to add the quiet part to it. There's absolutely no sound, but also how fast it took off, and there was no wind, there was no burst to knock us down. It was
Hmm.
the best way I can describe it is I don't. It's hard to tell how big this object was, but if you had like a rubber band and I held the other end and we let go of it,
Yeah.
that's what it looked like. It looked like it folded upon itself, but it basically it was a white thing like this, and it had lines. But then all of a sudden, when it took off, it went purple, pink, and blue, and it looked like scales of a snake. Like snakes have scales, and that
Hmm.
was all lighting up, really pretty colors. But it was so quick, and then it just collapsed on it. And I remember when it lit up, it got real bright. Everybody's shadows got dark. I mean, it was like a big flash, and
Yeah.
then it was gone. No wind, no sound, nothing. And we were like just stunned. Um,
And how many were there total out there? Was it just
it
four?
was Mrs. Lowick, her daughter,
Oh.
but her daughter was kind of young and went back inside. Probably
Hmm.
didn't want to hang out with the grown-ups. Dick and his wife and me. So
Wow. So five altogether. And when that, excuse me, when that it sounds like it was like morphing or something. I mean, it just sounds like.
It looked like
Did you actually see it go in a direction, or did it disappear?
it was so fast. It disappeared, but it could have went in a direction. It looked like it was taken off. I don't know how, but it also took off so fast that it looked like it collapsed on itself.
Hmm.
So if you're looking at an object, let's say like up in space, that's like this square, and then or up in the sky, and it takes off the space, and it's really bright, it's just going to look like it got small.
Yeah.
It's so quick, and that's I don't know if it cloaked, realized something was wrong with its cloaking, and cloaked the ship right there in front of us, or just went invisible, which would explain why we didn't get knocked back.
Yeah.
But it there was no noise, but it looked like a flash of lightning is how bright it was, and it was gone.
Now,
But I remember seeing purple, pink, and blue in those scales, like it went, it's like gone, real quick.
wow, when you said it looked like it had strings hanging out, what exactly? Can you try to describe that a little bit better?
Sure. So if I had an object like this and there was a string attached to it, another string, and we tightened it, you know what I mean?
Uh,
That's what it looked like, except it wasn't strings. It was more like a laser beam or just a beam of light that slowly started to become more transparent at the leading edge.
I see.
I just called it strings because that's what I called it as a kid. I was trying to figure out what that was, but it almost to me looked like whatever it was that was up there was partially invisible, and the sun was hitting the object just right that we were able to see part of the craft. That could have been what I was seeing. It
Hmm.
was cloaked, but for some reason I was able to see it. That's what I think. And then but
So, what was everyone else's reaction like that was watching? I mean,
well, I went. I was so amped up. I ran home to find my mother, and she
yeah,
wasn't home. And I called my grandmother to say, "Find my mom. It's an emergency." Well, we didn't have cell phones back then.
yeah,
Mom came home with an uncle that we haven't seen or I've never met before, so we had company at the house. And I stormed in there. I go, "Mom, you're not gonna believe what happened." Blah 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 about the UFO. And I remember her drinking coffee and going, "That's great, son. That's wonderful." And she continued on to talk to my uncle, and I think that's probably the first bad word I ever said in the house at that age. But I remember saying, "How much coffee you got, Mom?" And she goes, "I've got a whole pot." I go, "Good. Don't blanking drink it." And then I left. And I remember her saying, get back here," because I knew I was in trouble. But I needed to get her attention.
yeah,
So I went over and got my neighbors. I said, "Y'all got to come over and tell my mom. She doesn't believe this. You know, she doesn't. She just blew me off." And they go, "Sure." Now keep in mind, my mom never met these neighbors. This is about 12 houses down the street. So I invited Mrs. Ladwick and Dick inside the house. And I remember the awkward moment of my mom talking to my uncle, and then kind of caught off guard. We got company in the house. "Hi, how you doing?"
hmm.
And then there was an eerie moment of silence.
Awkwardness. Yeah,
No one was talking. And I remember I was pouring coffee, and I was like, "Tell them what happened." So they both told my mother, and I think my mother was in denial at the time. Um, but it was so good that I had eyewitnesses. Nobody would ever believe me, kid running in, and I never made up stories like that anyway. I just couldn't believe that my mother would blow me off when I'm panicking like that. I don't know what she was thinking at the time.
so do
She
you think
told me
she
later,
did she ever believe them too, or did she? Or she
she
did?
knew
Okay,
it was real when they came in.
yeah,
She'd never met them, and you've got two different neighbors coming in. Yes, I was with them, and they were more stunned like me. But she
yeah,
knew something was up. She said she was disturbed by it, not because believing in UFOs. Just the fact is, what if that thing could have taken her son?
yeah,
I remember her saying that to me, like, "My baby, what if it did something?" So she
yeah.
was more concerned on a safety issue. Um, but yeah, it was such a life changing event that even to this day, um, we still talk about it. If when I talk, if bump or I go home, the neighbors want to rekindle the old memories of that day. So
Now,
yeah,
did anyone call like a newspaper or anything like that?
yes. Uh, I think it's Mr. Gons. Spelled a G, but it could be John. But the Dick called the weather company and called around, calls the newspaper. This is when things get strange. Is when he
Oh,
started calling.
oh,
"Oh yeah,
good.
story gets better." But this So anyway, he took two photographs, okay, and I saw both of them, and I have a copy of it where it's the blue sky and it's like this, and then there was one right over Miss Lavitt's house where you can see the object right above it, and you can get a good distance. It's right above the tree line.
Wow.
We've had two of those. He had two of those pictures. I had one of them. So the next day he went and developed the film, and then I had a copy of the picture the next day. And I remember at 3 o'clock I went out there, and they were out there sitting in the lawn chairs. So they were out there the next day at 3 o'clock because it was 3 o'clock the
Oh,
following,
they were looking for it to
hoping
come
that it would
back.
come back,
Yeah.
right? So I would say probably a month after the, or a couple of months after this incident, somebody broke into Dick's house, and all they took was the whole stack of pictures. Because remember, you get them in a books,
Yeah.
and you'd have negatives. His house was so organized. They probably had OCD by the power of 10. Everything was dressed. All the books, everything. There was not one book sticking out. Everything's per carpet clean. It was just a very clean house. I believe him when he says he knew where he put it. He put it in the top drawer, and all the photos were gone. I was really mad about that
Was
because,
anything else taken or just that?
no, just that.
Wow, that's very suspicious, isn't it?
Well, this is where it gets weird. Mine disappeared around the same time too, and that was gold to me. Gold, okay. My mother, I thought my mother. I remember laying it right there. I had a spot where I kept it. I thought maybe she threw it away, and she never saw it. It just was. I remember seeing it one day, and then the next day I didn't see it anymore, and I thought somebody moved it or put it somewhere. But it was the same week when Dick had his house broken into. My photo was missing too.
Wow.
Even though I took it down to the mall back then when we had this photo place where they had color printers, which was a big deal back
Oh
then.
yeah.
I
1 hour print.
Xeroxed as
Yeah.
many copies of it, but I don't have the original anymore. So
Wow.
yeah,
Well, okay. Well, look, we'll continue to talk about that. We're ready to go on break. So hang on, everyone. We'll be right back. All right. So we're back. I'm here with Jeremy Ray, and we're back on to talk about. We were right in the middle of talking about his very interesting sighting when he was 16 years old back in 1996, and we were talking about the pictures going missing. So, Jeremy, do you still have a copy of that original picture you had today?
basically it's. I mean, it was a color printer picture. I mean,
Oh, color
and
printer. Oh,
yeah,
those
just
aren't
a
very
color,
good. I know what you
and
mean. Yeah.
it was
And they
printed
fade
out.
too.
Yes, sir. So that was like back in '96 where I went to this photo place and just Xeroxed it on there. That's what I did.
Oh,
And I have a copy of it, and I actually gave a copy to Dick many years later, because But what happened around that time when the photos were taken, supposedly stolen, I was real upset about it, and I went over there many times and asked, "I'll help you go through your house and look for it." And I think the second time I went over there to push him, "Let's tear up the house. Let's see if we can find this stuff." He snapped at me and said, "Do not tell anybody about this ever again." And I remember that was kind of uncalled for. And I remember looking at his wife, and she had this stern look too. So I had no idea, but they were scared and upset about this. Um,
they were probably scared that someone actually broke in, possibly, and took them, right? I mean,
mhm. Yeah, so
and
they were. To me, it was mean because I'm all energetic, and then all of a sudden you guys are scolding me, and it's kind of like, well, are you saying don't come around here no more? What's going on? I
yeah,
understand now that I'm older that they probably thought in the beginning I told all these people out there about it, which I didn't, because every time I brought up the story, people would laugh. No one would take it seriously.
really.
That's one of the reasons why I came to become a UFO investigator, because I went around trying to find answers about this object, and nobody could explain to me what that is except with some stupid explanation. And I knew it wasn't that. That was a kite, or that was just you know, people just make things up. I
Or
know what I saw.
reflection of the sun or something like that, or did you hear it all? Yeah.
But anyway, back to that before I hop around too much. I What was the deal? I thought that Dick thought that I talked too much. That somebody in the neighborhood, well, we're going to break in and steal the pictures. That's what I was thinking. What Dick was talking about was he was thinking somebody higher up, maybe them, because he thought this is what he thought. He thought that object up there came back and got the pictures because I lost mine at the same time. He lost his in the same time, and we
Hmm.
live in two different houses.
Yeah.
And that was something I would not lose. So that was his theory. To me, it's just a mystery. I just don't think we would lose something that important the same week. I noticed that mine was missing. I went over to talk to Dick to ask if I can get a copy of those negatives or get another one because I remember he printed out doubles and he goes his was missing. So he didn't even let me know about it. But we
Wow.
didn't. We were on a phone call basis. I just a kid that knocked on the door. But yeah, that definitely changed my life. And I believe in my heart, I believe that that is so sad that I couldn't go around and talk about it because it was such a taboo subject. It was immediately slammed down. And I live in a Bible Belt town, so of course it's going to happen. This is 1996. People really didn't talk about it as much as we do now. It's a little way more open than it is now when I was growing up. And that was kind of my little agenda. I remember saying, when I grow up, become an adult, I'm going to educate the public on this subject matter because it's more important than a reputation or, it's more important. We should all be able to talk about this freely and not being a taboo subject so we can learn from it, try to figure out what this is.
Now, when
That,
you mentioned earlier that they called the newspaper, did the newspaper do anything? Did they publish anything? No.
no, no, sir.
So, and I know there were, well, of course, MUFON was since 1969, so that was around, and but no one really
Nobody
knew about the
didn't
reporting
know what
sites, right?
MUFON was.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't know what MUFON was. I found out about MUFON back in about a year or two later. I think it was actually 19, probably a year or two later. A MUFON person came to town to do a talk. And someone said, remember that redhead guy, Jeremy, he saw a UFO. And they told me, hey, that UFO people are coming. So
Ah.
I went and met a woman named Doris Upchurch, Texas MUFON. She's deceased now, and I showed her, drew the object, described her, told her it was no sound, and that's basically, it was nice to have someone to talk to for the first time that actually would sit there and listen to me and take it seriously. And
Well,
I just decided, wow, this is awesome. I want to be a part of MUFON one of these days.
ah. Now, can you imagine if you had no other witnesses, how hard this would be for you? I mean, you were lucky enough to have other witnesses, but they were a lot older than you, so it must have been really hard when you were telling like your friends and people your own age. Did they just always blow you off, or did?
I had a good friend, Wesley, who I thought believed my story. It didn't.
Huh?
And one day we were walking through the neighborhood, and I go, "That's him. Let's talk to him." And Dick's like, "Oh yeah, it happened." And just then he believed. He was like, "Oh my God, it really did happen," because this is a
So he
stranger.
was just like okay
Just
with you
going
talking
along with
about it,
it.
but he wasn't really believing you.
He was just being a good friend, a
Yeah.
supportive friend. Uh, uh, if I didn't have any witnesses, I don't know. It would. Here's a good example. I had another guy that in high school, his name, friend of mine. He didn't believe me either, but he never said it to my face until he saw me on Hangar One many, many years ago on History Channel. He was like, "I believe him now. I believe him." Because he was talking about it when he was 16, and now he's on a TV show talking about it, and that was enough for him to believe. So it's just people. I mean, if somebody told me they saw a leprechaun run across the street, I mean, really, am I? It's just as unbelievable as that to these people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't blame them. You can't, seeing is believing. But
Right.
I just always just remember because I believe that it was important enough. I didn't care what people thought of me. I thought the information was more important.
So as
You know.
you had gotten older and you started, was it in Texas where you first joined MUFON, or where were you?
No, I joined the military. I got older and joined the military.
Hmm.
I had another sighting when I was in combat,
Oh,
and
I
that's
want to talk about that, but we'll continue on this
sure.
first. Yeah.
But to answer your question, after I got out of the military, I moved up to California, and when I was going to college, and I'm sitting there in class. This is when it hit. I was sitting there in class. I think it was my second semester in college. Now I'm like, I don't want to do this. You know, I want to follow my passion. I joined MUFON. It's like, well, you don't get paid. I didn't care. You
Yeah.
know, So I finished college, but I'm more focused on UFOs than I did my study work. And so I went pretty gun ho from 2006 to 2010 doing UFO cases and just dedicating myself to MUFON.
Now, did you, with this curiosity and you looking and investigating, did you try to find out if there were other sightings in the area in Texas where you had yours?
Oh yeah, uh,
And what did you come up with?
nothing, zero. Well, there was a woman that got her name in the paper, in the small town paper, about a UFO picture that she took a year prior, but that was it. And they put that on the front page, put it on the
Um,
front page. But that's it. I went through back then we didn't have internet. I mean, we kind of did, but it wasn't like today. So I went to the newspaper company and went through their archives.
mhm.
I went through all of it because I heard about it and I wanted to find that article. And after my hands were all black, I finally found the front page of that. I was off by 8 months,
Oh,
but
wow.
found that woman, talked to her, and she was like what you would call a contactee, like myself. But she's had ongoing experiences her whole life, just as I have too. Uh, and It was interesting for her perspective, but I think she saw it more on a spiritual sense than I was trying to find it in a more scientific sense. So I didn't really get any answers, but she says that she sees them all the time. Um, and that time she was lucky to catch a picture.
Hmm.
But yeah, nope, not very many UFO sightings in Victoria, Texas. And actually, I checked the MUFON database right when I first joined MUFON, when I got access to it, and pulled up everything that happened in that year in Texas to try to see if anything was very similar, if anybody saw what I saw, and nothing came up. It was dead end.
Yeah. I always thought, realistically, I always thought it was very strange how, like, why there would be a flap or, many sightings in one area, why it would show up again. Because it's a pretty big world. And why would they show up in the same area when there would be so much more to explore? I mean, I don't know if you've ever thought of that, but
I thought of it. It doesn't make sense. I remember 6 years or 7 years later, I went to visit Dick again. He told me it came back, and I was
oh,
like, "What?"
really?
Yeah, I said, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "I was out in the backyard, and get on the lawn chair trying to get some sun. He liked to tan in his backyard, and he saw it come down, and then it went straight back up." And you asked that question right there. As me being 19 or whatever, I mean, I know we all witnessed this, but I didn't want to believe that because it doesn't make any sense unless they're we try to figure it out. Maybe there was somebody in the neighborhood that they were abducting, right? Abduction, because everybody wants to talk about that.
Yeah.
And maybe they were coming back, and we just happened to bust them. Who knows? They were in the neighborhood, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right there, boom. I can't believe no one didn't see it. It was
Hmm.
stretched across the entire. It stretched. If you walked across the street to the other side of on the other side of the neighborhood, it still was. It stretched like a cross. It wasn't like a small object. It was like boom, like big, huge, bright light, and those beams were touching both ends of the street. So it wasn't something tiny. I figured people could see it way down the road, but yeah,
How,
that's what he said. I kind of didn't believe it. Now being involved in the UFO field for so long, I believe it because
yeah.
weird things happen. People have ongoing experiences in the same spot.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is so bizarre how that does happen.
So,
Your neighbor, Dick, did he did he take a lot of pictures or was it just a couple?
too,
Two. Why did he only take two? And why did you only take one?
because they were just looking at it, I believe. We were
Yeah.
all not really thinking about gathering evidence so no one would believe us.
I understand.
We
Yeah.
were shocked that this was even happening.
Yeah.
That's I think that's what it was. I wish we did take more pictures. I wish we made many copies of it. I
Yeah.
wish I knew that I would have locked it up in a vault
Yeah.
because it was really good.
Well,
I
you
think
wouldn't
it,
have thought to lock it up in a vault because who would think that they would go missing? I mean, that is just a really bizarre part of the story, actually.
to
Um,
me, what's bizarre is I that was one of the most important things for me, and the fact that it disappeared on my watch.
yeah.
I was so frustrated and so hurt that I lost it or someone threw it away. So I went over to go talk to Dick to see if I can get another copy of it,
Yeah.
like immediately, and his were missing. That's what's bizarre.
Were you thinking that it possibly could have been your mother because she was trying to protect you in some type of way, or that never
No, I
crossed your
think
mind?
my mother, if she was cleaning up, she would have known, and she's even told me, I knew how important that was to you, and I would have never thrown
Oh,
that away.
okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. So I want to talk about your military experience, but I
Sure.
heard you say just a second ago you've had lifelong things happen. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So let's hear about where were you stationed, and let's hear the details. Uh,
Sure, I was an Army infantryman, paratrooper. So I was
hmm,
from the 82nd Airborne on your side of North Carolina, Fort Bragg, and I was deployed to Kosovo. This is I don't remember if you remember Saddam Milosevic, Bill Clinton.
yep,
That
I
was around the
remember all
time.
that. Yeah.
So it was 1999. We were there. We were in an observation point outside this village outside of Pristina, which is like the capital of Kosovo or whatever. And it was that night I was on guard, and I can't. One of my guards was like, "Isn't that interesting? It's an airplane, but it's not moving." And I looked up, and after my experience from 1996, I'm looking at it going, well, it could be a UFO. I mean, it's not moving. It looked like a little basketball, little basketballs, like four basketball size red lights, but they just stayed right above our outpost.
Just a light
So
only.
just red,
Mm-hmm.
just a light, no movements, just right there, basketball size, hovering right above us. It wasn't stars low enough. I remember we stared at it for a little while. There was nothing spectacular about it, just it being perfectly still. That I decided to, or we both decided, we agreed to wake up our lieutenant. And we woke him up, I think it was about 1:30 in the morning, we were on guard. And he goes, well, report a UFO to battalion commander, battalion area. And I told him, well, I don't know how to do that. That's what I said. And he goes, well, don't worry, I'll get up and do it. And our lieutenant was a lazy piece of you know what. So the fact that he got up to file that was like, wow, he's actually doing something. It wasn't like, oh, we're all panicking and all this. It was more nonchalant. He got on and called the battalion area, and gave us a situation report on an unknown object that's hovering above. Um,
Hmm.
look, it was such a boring sighting that we looked away from it many times and continued different conversations, and then continued to look back up. It wasn't that big of a deal, but I do realize during that moment, that was the only time I noticed something that was interesting, was no one laughed it off. It was
Yeah.
taken seriously. It was reported, and you know that's about it in a nutshell.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I've heard a number of people say, and over the years, and then actually, a friend of a relative um, told me that they watched a UFO that looked like the size of a washing machine. It looked like the shape of a washing machine, and it was spinning, and it was there for like hours, and people would go out and look at it. No one reported this is in another country. No one reported it or anything. They just watched it, and they got bored, and everyone went inside. I mean, it is kind of funny, and I've had a lot of people tell me that they watched whatever it was for a while, and you know, and got bored with it. So maybe that's part of their part of their gig. They're trying to get us bored, and then they'll do something or gather some type of information. Who knows?
Who
But
knows? I
yeah,
do. I don't remember it leaving. I remember it fading out. I
uh,
remember that it seemed like, I remember basketballs, and then when we looked up later, it was like a little bit smaller, and then we looked up later, and it was like gone, but it was still stayed in the same spot. Four balls of light, just like perfect lined
yeah.
across. I
Now,
don't
when
know.
that happened and had co-witnesses, did you tell them about what happened to you when you were younger?
Uh, yeah, I talked about that, but I want you to know that we all forgot about that UFO the following night. We totally forgot about it because we got mortar attacked that night. We almost got killed that night.
Oh boy,
Um,
wow.
really, really bad, horrible night. So
Yeah,
we were more thinking about our lives and not thinking. No, I mean we forgot about that damn UFO. It
yeah.
was only until later on when I brought it up. Y'all remember we saw a UFO, and then people, oh yeah, yeah. But if we weren't distracted by that, we probably would have talked a lot more about it. But
Was there any question of, say, enemy like drone looking at a position or anything like that? Was that ever a question?
We did have drones back then, but they were the word drone kind of really didn't exist yet.
Yeah,
I remember I saw my first Predator drone. It looked like it came over, and it was in Kosovo. Don't get me wrong, but that scared the hell out of me because I almost shot it. I didn't know if it was a missile or what it was,
yeah.
so I didn't know what these things were. It could have been, but like I said, it was quiet, no sound, and it was there for about 30 minutes, maybe
Wow.
30 20 minutes.
Yeah.
My lieutenant looked up at it. We looked at it. I remember him saying, "It's a UFO. Let's report it." And I remember him saying that because he couldn't figure out what it was. So it's a UFO. We're reporting it as UFO. We don't know what this is.
Now, when
Uh,
you report something like that in the military, and I'm sure there's a lot of it, and because there a lot of people talk about either wartime or reporting in the military. Does it just go to a dead end, or has anyone ever questioned? Do you know anything about that?
sorry. Uh, I guess it went to a dead end. It just was reported. But no Men in Black showed up. Nobody came to follow up any questions. I mean, it was as interesting as it was. It wasn't spectacular, but like I said, it was easy to forget right away after all of us. It was like a mind wipe after getting blown up. Someone trying to kill
Yeah.
us the following night. We were more thinking of survival and
Oh,
everything
sure.
else. We're going to make it home.
Yeah.
Cares about that UFO? So
Absolutely. I can totally get that. We
that probably kind of answers your question because we moved around a lot, but we did report it, or my lieutenant reported it. I stood right there and listened to him. He gave a standard report like size, activity, location, unit, time, equipment. You just kind of state these things in the report, and that was it. And I guess they logged it. Who knows? We would have read it, but it probably was blown off. No, I didn't see no jets coming or anything like that. It was early in the morning. We raided it in. They said, and the battalion area took notes, and that was it. He
yeah.
went back to bed right away after that.
Well, and so that was it for the military. So you got out of there. Did you have actually sightings in between the 16-year-old time and then when you went into the military, or that was
It
it?
was just
Yeah.
that was the first one, and then that was my second one.
Yeah.
I remembered a sighting when I was a kid, and I remember my dad telling me it's a meteor, and
Oh,
I believed,
yeah.
and I went inside. So to me, March 20th, 1996 was my first sighting, but it really wasn't. My first sighting was with my father in 1986 in a town called Runge, Texas, and I remember very well. It was a ball light, and this stuff was dripping off it. It was like dripping, and then the drip would come down and then go back up. That's not a meteor. But when my dad told me it was a meteor, I believed him, and he told me to go inside. And I remember him standing out there looking at it. And I told my grandmother. Grandma's like, "You better do what Daddy says." So I went to bed. My father's now deceased. He died in 1989, a few years after that. But
Wow.
my mother remembers him coming in that night saying he saw something strange down the street. He
Mm.
told me to go inside because he didn't know what it was. He was trying to protect his son.
Yeah.
But I remember it's just a white light with some things dripping and going back up. So when my dad told me that was a meteor, I actually believed those were meteors. And
Yeah.
I remember arguing with my teacher in class, no, meteors fizzle up in the sky or whatever. I go, no, they hover and these things drip and come back up. She was just looking at me like, okay, but
Wow. Wow, that's fantastic. I had I saw a fireball. I've talked about this on the show
Mhm.
many years ago. Uh, Go over me, and it was much more spectacular than my UFO sighting. This was I could see this thing turning, and it was sort of orange and cracked, and like sparks flying off of it. It was just amazing. And again, no sound, but it was probably really high over me. But it looked huge. It looked like at least the size of the moon. It was big. So that was fantastic. But it was definitely a fireball. It wasn't what you're talking about. I mean, when you're talking about something dripping and then going back up, I mean that is just another really bizarre thing.
I believe my father. It's a
Yeah.
normal thing. It's a meteorite. Go inside, son. And I logged that in my head that that's what they look like until I was educated properly later on down the road. But
Yeah.
I
Wow.
probably carried that with me for many, many years.
Yeah,
believing that's
yeah.
what that
We
was.
have like 4 minutes left,
Sure.
and what I'd like to do is, in the last part of the show, is talk to you about some investigations you've done, and then we can go on and talk about how you got on, um, the spotlight on Hangar 21 and Hangar 1 and all that. So, um, again, in these like 4 minutes, um, where when you get discharged from the military, you said that you went up to Northern California and then you went to school,
Hmm.
and but you made it all the way through school, but you decided like halfway through that you wanted to do more investigations and get into MUFON.
Yes, sir.
At that time, were you following, uh, like going? Had you gone to like a symposium or anything like that, or?
Yes, I was, like I said, I was gun ho. I would try to go as to many of them as I could. I'd go to the Irvine, and
Oh
then the
yeah,
major symposiums like would usually be in Denver around that time. Save up all my money I could to fly up there to be a part of the team and get to meet everybody and network. You know,
uh huh.
so it was
And what year was that about?
oh 2006, 7, 8, 9,
Yeah.
10. I mean, you would meet like my first time. I remember I met Richard Dolan, and I remember reading his book, and I was kind of not a little starstruck, but then later on I mean I look back and I'm like I was on a show with him. We all became good friends. It's a small, you believe it or not, the UFO community is quite small, and you get to know everybody pretty quick. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it's I what I one of the things I really like about there's a lot of really intelligent people that are taking this seriously, and of course, you can find fringe in whatever you do, and any, I mean, there may be something to Bigfoot, there may be something to ghosts and things like that, but there's it's kind of the same thing. There's people that are trying to look at it, trying to figure it out, and then there's the people that go off the rails, and everyone has to decide what tact they want to take in looking into it. And but I really enjoy the topic because I think I don't really think that I'm ever going to get an answer, but I still like to ponder what a UFO could be and listen to other people's thoughts on it. And if we only have a couple of minutes here, would you have, if you had to guess, would you think that it's most likely extraterrestrial, or do you have any thoughts on that? What
right.
people are seeing?
I think it might be a little bit more beyond that. I don't. I can give you analogies of why I think that, but to explain it's kind of difficult. It's something that probably we haven't thought about, but it could be a mix of all of that. It could be extraterrestrial, and by saying that, from another planet traveling here, great distance to get here. It could be extra dimensional, and then once you start climbing up the ladder on what it could be, then it gets to the point of where what have you not thought about? So here's a good example. We got one more minute. Try to imagine a color you've never seen before. And I'm
Hmm.
not talking purple, black, white, blue, red, brown, orange, green, yellow, right? You If you can think of a color, I know you can't, but if you could, how are you going to explain it to me? And you
Yeah.
don't even have the correct vocabulary to explain it to me.
Right.
Uh, I would say that category, UFOs are definitely somewhere in that category of something that we haven't thought about and we can't think about until we observe and experience it ourselves.
Yeah.
That's if I'm not saying humans are dumb. I just say we have limitations.
Yeah. We do. We have limitations to our senses,
Yes,
and
sir.
we also have limitations to our spectrum that we can actually see.
Mhm.
Which is another whole type of thing. It could be something outside of our spectrum that all of a sudden we can't see. But anyway, we are ready to go to break, and hang in there. We'll be right back. All right, so I am back. Um, I am with Jeremy Ray, and we're talking about his past experiences and sightings in UFOs. We're going to talk about a lot more in this next segment. It's almost a full hour segment. Jeremy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
And so let's talk about you joined MUFON, and I know you're on the STAR team. And so I know they think a lot of you to get to that, that position and move on. So let's talk about you did investigations in California. Let's talk first about that and how that went.
It was actually, if you want to talk about Star Team and how I got into that, it kind of falls in that category. There was an aerospace company called Bigelow Aerospace that
Oh
made
yeah.
space
Yep.
movies. Robert Bigelow is kind of infamous in the UFO
Yep.
field, but he started to come in and fund uh, MUFON investigators. So he actually the first time getting paid to go out and do a case. I signed up for that, and I remember in the application there was non-disclosures and stuff, but they were looking for law enforcement or military, people. And I put in all my military stuff, and usually during the time it was James was the executive director of MUFON during that time, and I think he was approving, and I got approved to be a part of it.
Hmm.
So during this time, this was I think the Star Team was like real Star Team because we were being funded. Everything was taken care of. You just had to make sure that if you got the notice, you had to be there in 24 hours. So you had to have all your stuff packed anyway, and they would take care of everything: flights, rentals. We even had per diem, and then you got paid to go do your case. So I was real excited about that. In the beginning, this is interesting. I had a normal job and I was working, but I've been out of the army since I got out in 2001, and it's now 2008, and I get an email from usarmy.gov, and it's assigning me to a UFO case. And I was like, well, I'm supposed to be getting MUFON to send me, these Star Team cases. So I just scrolled down and I saw the guy's name and his rank, and I called the number and I said, hey, and I was like, yeah, well, thanks for assigning me the case. Wonderful, and yada yada. I said, yeah, I was in the Army too, and I told him what I did, and I was a paratrooper and all that. And I said, so what do you do? And he goes, well, I work at the Pentagon, and actually I'm at the Pentagon right now. I'm sitting at my desk. And
Huh.
I go, well, I said, well, pardon me if I ask, what does that got to do with MUFON? And he goes, oh no, no, I'm a MUFON investigator too. I was like,
Oh.
oh, okay. Oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Okay, well, blah blah blah. Hung up, and I'm going. You shouldn't have used your USArmy.gov email to send me a freaking MUFON case,
Oh.
right?
Yeah. No
You're,
kidding.
you're not supposed to do that. But I
Yeah.
just remember he just probably screwed up. Not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Move along, right?
Yeah.
We all know now, but back then, I'm not saying I was that gullible, but I did call him and I was asking, why am I getting a MUFON case from USArmy.gov? So I think probably getting ready to go, and I think probably a couple of hours later, I get an email from MUFON to assign me the case from Richard. Same thing,
Hmm.
but so I think they kind of screwed up on that.
Yeah.
So I was ready. So I went to Houston, Texas. There's basically the report was two guys had missing time. A UFO picked them up and took them. That's what they're saying. They contacted MUFON, and MUFON didn't show up. Bigelow Aerospace scientist guys showed up,
Hmm.
and they were furious because they didn't contact Bigelow. They contacted MUFON. They wanted to know why this Bigelow company is coming in and wanted to invest. So they weren't gonna talk, and they were like, just leave us alone, yada yada. So that's when I got assigned a case, and I went over there and I talked to them. I said, well, we'll set up a thing for 2 weeks, and I'll come visit you in 2 weeks
Hmm.
because they didn't want to do it today. They were just pushing. They didn't want to do it at all.
Yeah.
And so finally, I showed up. I remember ringing the doorbell, and they didn't answer the door. Um, I remember talking to the neighbor, and I asked the neighbor. I said, "Hey, the two guys." Because I was supposed to be here at their house. They're not answering. And she was like, "Yeah, I just talked to them 5 minutes ago. They're in there." So I knew that they saw that I was there, and they weren't answering the door.
Wow.
So I could smell a little. Well, I can't. Shouldn't be saying this part, but I could smell something going on inside the house. So maybe they didn't want to open the door, right? So I
Uh,
went across the street. And I'm sitting at a outside bar. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna wait here about an hour or two, and if they don't hit me up, I guess I'll just drive back home. This is a good 3 hour drive or 2 hour
wow.
drive. Well, they finally answered. They go, "How long is this?" The first thing he said, "How long is this gonna take?" And I told them, and then he said, "Well, we want to meet in a public place." And I said, "That's fine. I'm right across the street." And so they showed up, and when they showed up, they were so paranoid, looking over their shoulders and scared. So I knew they were shooken up about this.
Yeah.
And one of the guys drilled into me, and he wanted to know why Bigelow. was there, and that's not who he called. And he wanted to make sure I wasn't a government spook, and doesn't trust anybody. And basically, it was just he was chewing me out for at least 10 to 15 minutes. And I was like, wow, this isn't going well. Maybe I should, let him know, or I should just go. And I said, well, sir, I'm not a government official. And I explained and tried to make them feel comfortable. I said, I made up something to the point. I said, well, I live at my grandma's house. I play video games and I smoke whatever I was smelling from their house. You know what I mean? And when I said those words, which is, you know, anyway, they relaxed.
Yeah.
And I was able to get them to talk.
Yeah.
I had to get them to be comfortable, and I figured this is not going anywhere. I felt like I was in an interrogation,
Yeah.
and this wasn't going really well. So I got to break the ice, and then they started telling me their story, and it was very, very, very interesting. This is what happened. They rented a car, okay, and they went on a road trip to the Grand Canyon. They were coming back into Texas, and one of the guys is an amateur photographer. He sees a groundhog popping his head out in the middle of the road, and they decide to pull over. And he gets out and he starts snapping pictures of all these groundhogs. Then they both start feeling this feeling that they're being watched, and they need to get in the car and leave right now. They both describe this, like get spooked. So they stopped what they were doing. They got in the car and they started driving. And about maybe a mile into the drive, a big shadow comes over their car. And they look up, and it's like this big plate, a big saucer right above them. So they're freaking out, and the guy starts to outrun it, starts to accelerate, and he's getting it up as high as he can, and the thing's staying with him the whole time. And the guy in the passenger, trying not to say their names, but the guy in the passenger is looking up, and he also sees out in the desert this thing running alongside of the road, or out in the field, this white humanoid being with an upside down head teardrop running alongside of the car, okay? And so basically they're speeding. They're speeding down the highway. This UFO's right on top of them, right? And while the guy's looking out, he's seeing out in the distance this little thing getting closer and closer and closer and closer. So I'm trying to show you. Here's the car. He's coming at an angle like this, So it's gaining speed. And he's telling him you need to speed up because whatever this thing is getting closer and closer. So the next thing they remember is a big bam. When it got to the car, there was a big bam. Everything went white inside the car. The one described it as sticking your head in a mayonnaise jar. The other guy described it as sticking your head in a box of Kleenexes. Whatever. They both had their own interpretations. Mm-hmm. But they felt like they were being lifted up. And then that's it, right? Next thing they know, they're driving down the road, and they feel a little slight buzz, like they're, but they're happy, and they're giggling, and they're having a good time. And then one of the guys goes, wait a second, didn't we hit somebody? Did we run over somebody? And then the guy's like, wait, you're right. I remember hearing a bang. So they stopped, pulled over, and they walked outside, and they looked around the car, and that's when all their memories came back. They realized that they had missing time. They were supposed to be home about an hour, or not home, but they were missing about an hour of time, a little bit over an hour and 20 minutes of time. Of course, they looked at the clock, things weren't matching up, and then the fear kicked in where they were flooded with just the memories of being picked up. They remember David Bowie, believe it or not, was playing on the radio when they were out running the guy, okay? And this thing. And when everything went white, there was no David Bowie, there was no sound. It was crystal clear, eerie silence. But they did feel the sensation like they were being lifted up.
Wow.
Okay? Wow. That's it to sum it up. What my job was to fill out a report, put all the facts of what they said, none of my conclusions, and present that to MUFON, and MUFON presented it to Bigelow. And then I think the idea was, they wanted to buy the car off them, right? They wanted to get the vehicle. And that was the problem, is it wasn't their vehicle. It was an Enterprise. It was a rent-a-car. So it took me a little bit to get the receipt that the guy had, and I submitted that off too. Now, if they went to go track down the car, I'm pretty sure Bigelow's men went and got the car. And probably took it to Los Alamos, from what I heard, and I don't know if it was related, but it could have. I don't think they got anything off the car at all, but except for a high electromagnetic interference off the windshield. Many weeks later.
Wow.
I talked to Chuck Malden. He's one of our scientific advisors at MUFON. Have you ever met Chuck Malden?
No.
Okay. Well, during that time, he said that if there was a high electromagnetic interference coming off the windshield alone. That's plexiglass. Doesn't really make sense, but maybe they were pulled through the windshield, not like outside, when they were taken up. Maybe they were pulled through there, and that's why there's some kind of something going on right there. It's a little bit up over my head, but that was the mission objective, was to go down there, fill out a report, and then get the evidence. Because we would only go deploy on category 2s and 3s, and most of those would have some kind of evidence. And the car, in this case, was the evidence.
Wow.
Wow. But like I said, these guys were traumatized. They wanted answers. I couldn't give them. I don't know either. But yeah, that's probably going to shake them up for the rest of their life. They're probably not going to be the same after that.
Right.
Right.
Can you take a look at your computer and just turn down the
Oh,
volume a little bit
sure.
because I'm getting a little bit of feedback here.
Is that better?
I think so. Yeah, that's
Turn it
better.
down
Thank you.
halfway.
So, in a case like that, are you told to interview the witnesses separately or together is okay?
I would have loved to have interviewed them separately, but they were partners, okay,
Yeah.
and they didn't even want to do the investigation. It's just the fact that I was hanging outside their house for an hour or two that they knew I wasn't going to go home. So they kind of were really mad and angry and decided to do it. So I was just glad it was either that or I was going home. Oh, there's one guy did all the talking while the other guy was looking over his shoulder, seeing if they were going to. I'm not kidding.
Really?
Anytime a white van passed by down the road, they were spooked. They were, I spun. It's the best way I could say it.
Yeah.
And of course, I'd ask the questions right there in front. Yeah, he would say mayonnaise jar, he would say Kleenex box, but they both agreed and confirmed to the story. Or the guy would throw in his 2 cents. Let him know David Bowie was playing on the radio, little things like that.
Wouldn't it be interesting if they could have regression hypnotherapy regression
I
to
brought
see?
that up to them, and they were not going to have it.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, yeah. That is a really wild story. So I'm assuming that they basically had the highway to themselves when they were driving along. No other witnesses to see anything, and that being or whatever it is running toward the
Along the
car,
side.
that is really wacky.
He said it was running like this, like tried to see
I
how I had
know
my
this is
fingers
audio
like
for a
this.
lot of people, but yeah,
It was running like they knew it wasn't a person the way it was running and how it was catching up, but it was a humanoid.
and for it to be able to run while they're trying to accelerate away to run that
Mhm.
type of speed,
They're going straight, and this thing's way back over here coming at an angle to catch up to them.
yeah,
And I remember the other guy to the left was saying that it was naked. It was like no clothes,
hmm
just white skin, bright white skin with an
wow,
upside down head, but they didn't describe eyes, nose, mouth, or nothing. Just a white silhouette or whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
No face on this being. But it said
okay,
when it got up to the car, he's screaming, "It's getting closer! It's getting closer! He's on us!" And then there was a boom,
yeah,
and everything went white inside.
wow. Boy, that sounds like a scary movie or a nightmare. It just sounds like really something. So I can totally get why they were the way they were about the whole situation, and why the smoke was coming out of the house. Had to mellow out a little bit. Um, in in a case like that, when you take information, are they expecting to hear back? Are they expecting to hear, an explanation of what they
um,
saw?
these guys didn't. They wanted an explanation that minute. That's what they wanted to get their. What is this? Why did this happen to us? I told them straight up how we do things and how I write a report and how it goes into the CMS and it's there for UFO research purposes. Other investigators might be able to use this case in the future that might link to something else. So you're actually helping in a way, but that's about as far as it's going to go.
Yeah,
On follow up, they didn't want to follow up,
yeah,
if you know what I mean. They wanted to do this one time and leave me to hell alone is what they were saying. I'm going to agree to do this, but you guys stop calling and leave us alone. We want to be left alone. We want to get back to our. So to them, they felt harassed But
Hmm.
I only called them one time. And they
Yeah.
were getting blown up a week before from Bigelow's men.
Yeah.
Um, and Bigelow showed up at their house and they weren't invited, and so it definitely didn't. Then they didn't want to be. They didn't realize that they contacted MUFON. They expect a MUFON representative to come, and now somebody else is showing up. That to them that was misleading, and they felt slight betrayed on whatever. They
Yeah.
want to keep this secret. And how does another company now know about it and coming in? That they were really upset about that.
What year
I was
was
very
this?
lucky to get an interview through them in the first place.
Hmm.
What were you going to ask?
What year was that? Did that happen?
2008.
Now, when
2008.
when wouldn't it be interesting 10 years later to find out? I know you can't do this, but I mean, it would be really interesting to talk to them now and see, for one thing, if anything else has happened, and for another thing, if they've had, like dreams or, or any other clarity of what happened, if they were actually drawn up into a craft, if they've had, you know, uh, you said that they gained their memory back of what was going on, and perhaps they got it all back. You never know,
Right.
but they probably, or if they are, they're probably just keeping it to themselves.
If that could be the case, but I believe after once they started telling their stories, they were comfortable with me during that time of the interview process. I believe he would have told me everything that he would have. They both the memory stops there. Actually, they don't even remember. They just remembered that they hit somebody, and when they got out of the car, all the memories came back, both of them.
Yeah,
Well, actually, they would start talking, and then, guy, don't you remember this thing coming over? And they go, yeah, I kind of do. And then all of a sudden, do you remember the guy running on the side of the road? And then it all came back. It's kind of like a dream where you wake. They describe it as like a dream where you wake up and you're trying to remember that dream, and you
yeah.
just need a couple of key words to trigger so you can get those memories. That's the way they described it. But they did have missing time. They were missing for. Uh, they should have been home an hour and 20 minutes early. They were an hour and 20 minutes late when they got home. So.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but this missing time thing is when someone has that happen, it's most likely the first time they've ever heard of a situation
Mhm.
like that. They've never heard of missing time before,
No,
and
no, they didn't. They just said that they had no memory of the time of that hour, or
yeah,
that or they believed that they whatever what it was took that time away from them. They were 100% on that.
yeah,
So.
yeah. I mean, there's so many questions that you could ask, like, what happened to the vehicle? Did the vehicle stay to the side of the road and wait for them to come back, and then they were
Yeah,
put in
but
place and mechanically started driving without them knowing it? All these questions. You
that
know,
would be interesting. But from their memories, white light or being lifted up and then back on the road driving, being happy in a good mood.
yeah,
So you've gone from extreme fear to nothingness to an hour of missing time to we're having a great time. It's one of the best road trips we've ever been on, slapping high fives or whatever. And then one of them go, well, let's don't have too much fun yet. Didn't we hit somebody?
yeah,
You know? No, we didn't. Well, maybe, yeah, we did. Well, this is a rent a car. Let's pull over and see what happened. Are we going to have to pay for this? And then all started clicking in, like right there at that moment. And when
wow,
they got out and they were walking around, they pulled off the side of the road. And then they were terrified, and the trip wasn't fun coming home, obviously, trying to figure out what the hell happened. Realized that their time was wrong. And so they reported it to MUFON. I'd like to ask them how they hear about MUFON, but
yeah,
they probably just wrote a report a UFO and filled it out and put it in there.
yep. That's yeah. Like I said, when I had my sighting, I never even thought to look online. Now, there was a story I'm going to say that I want to say Denise Stoner told
Mm-hmm.
me of kind of a similar incident of driving along, and I don't want to get this wrong. I don't want to misquote her, but it was kind of the similar thing. They were something happened while they were driving, and was drawn up, and she remembers like being inside of whatever it was, and she thought it was like whatever the craft was like living, which is really bizarre. Like it was a living, breathing thing. Not maybe not breathing, but something. Um, but there's a number of cases also where I've heard people claiming that they were tracked in their car as this thing, whatever it was going over them. A lot of stories about that, which
We have
I
an we have an episode on Hangar One called "Hunted by UFOs," and it's just cases exactly of what you're describing, being followed, being tracked, especially while they're in their vehicles, watching it, and it's still staying with them. There's a whole episode on that, but there's many more great cases that could have been in that show. But
yeah.
yeah, it happens more than often, that's for sure.
Now,
It's
would
not
you?
like an isolated case.
Right, right, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like if you were flying over, and well, there's really nothing to compare it to, really. But just if something is exploring the Earth, that would be like, if something's isolated and there's beings piloting something, you'd probably be interested in it. Um, was that the most spectacular? That sounds like it would be the most spectacular case you ever investigated. Would you say it is?
I would say that's the most craziest case I've ever investigated out of 120 or 50 cases I've done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be. I don't really think any of my other cases compare. I mean, most of them were just I saw something strange, it zipped off to somebody having constant experiences and listening to their life story of what's going on. I've had cases like that where a guy has told me his life story of things. That's a hard case to put together.
Hmm.
But no, this one, I'll never forget this one. Yeah, I would say that's the strangest case. There are
And
some that are kind of,
yeah, and you're
but I
very
believe
confident
these
those people
guys.
were, they everything seems like they're credible as far as they didn't really want to talk about it.
Nope, they did not. Yeah, everything was. I believe them.
Yeah,
I don't have no proof, but I would bet my last paycheck or whatever that these guys were telling me the truth
yeah,
all the way. It wasn't a hoax or anything like that. They were scared. I could see the fear in their eyes.
yeah,
They were hoping I'd have answers.
and
Um,
yeah. That is the problem with all these things is the proof part of it. It's all anecdotal. There's nothing. There's no solid evidence that we know of yet, and these things are they're spontaneous. They come in and out of people's lives, and that's why some of these UFO we were talking about it earlier. Some of these UFO detection ideas get off the ground, and
well,
I don't
between
know
you and
what
me
it would
about
take,
that,
huh?
between you and me, my take on that, I just want to tell you, I think it's a waste of time. I,
Okay, go ahead.
the reason why is because they're so ahead.
Yeah.
If they want to be detected, they get detected. If you're
Mm.
trying to catch them, they're smart enough to know what you're trying to do, and you ain't going to get caught. That's what I think. I think it's a waste of time, but hey, you know what? Good luck trying. I
Yeah.
know that there's a couple of the thing about it is that the best way I would say to detect a UFO is you being out there personally observing with your own eyes,
Yeah.
and then using the equipment that you have with you, cameras or whatever you want. But you need to be present
Yeah.
because consciousness plays a big role in the real UFOs, not the stuff that we've got. Um, I know from my own personal experiences that to be true. That if you see one, it sees you. Uh, I don't care who, that's, we have a radar system in our jets that track heat. And so, these things have a way to track your consciousness. If there was a grasshopper on a piece of grass and a UFO was hovered right above and the grasshopper looked at it, the UFO would know the grasshopper sees it. I just think that's how they work. So if you ever see a real UFO, I would recommend you could say in your mind, hey, if you are who I think you are, could you move to the left or move to the right to verify and see if it
Yeah.
does?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because if
remember.
you've seen it, they know. They know. I don't care how far away they are or how close they are. They know you see them. Um,
I had Ted Rowe. I don't know if you know who Ted Rowe is.
no, I know Ted
Yeah.
Rowe is.
Yeah. Yeah. I had him on my show, and he told this fantastic story about. I think he said it was in Oakland, and where he saw the UFO, and he knew that it knew that he was in the car somehow. I mean, it is totally bizarre, and
True.
I think it could, if intelligence can be, what we can't even imagine. What you're saying is probably right.
Uh, for me, I'm saying 100% because I've experienced it myself over and over through my life. Uh,
Yeah.
Observing and having a feeling
Hmm.
or a knowing that's undeniable. It's just like me. I don't. It's hard to explain, but
Yeah,
how could
well,
I explain
actually,
and give analogies? Say that
Ray,
again.
Ray Stanford has talked about that
Yeah,
feeling. You
I
know,
get that feeling too.
yeah.
It's I don't know. I can give you a couple examples. One time, me and my girlfriend, or recently, were on the porch, just like a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I'm getting that feeling, and I don't get it all the time. I probably had it happen to me maybe 4 or 5 times in my life. Okay, and I started getting that feeling. I'm like, I feel like that presence that I felt before, and I'm looking up, and I don't see nothing at all. But then the phone rings, and it's one of my friends from Texas that's never seen a UFO, and he's calling me, telling me he's seeing a UFO right now. And I
Wow.
find that kind of strange.
Yeah.
He tells me all about it. He hangs up. Then I get another phone call from another friend. Now, keep in mind, these two guys know each other, but they didn't talk about their sighting to each other. They called me. And one of my friends said that he saw a UFO 2 nights ago, same location, and he wanted to call and tell me about it. And it was just so synced up. And so it was almost like once I got off the phone, I was like, I felt it. And then two of my friends who've never seen UFOs are calling me and telling me they saw one. Not the same day, but it's just kind of weird. That's the only time I've had that feeling where I didn't see anything. But that is strange that right away my phone's ringing, and one of my skeptical friends was blown away by what he saw.
Wow.
Um, I can elaborate on. I'd like to. How much time do we got?
Yeah, we got about a half hour right now.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. Well, in 2008, around that time when I completed that case and stuff, I was out in the backyard in the town, Victoria, Texas, and it was probably like 1:30 in the morning, and I was about ready to go to bed, and I was smoking my last cigarette, and it was a clear night. There was no clouds, but there was one cloud off in the distance coming towards me, and it was oval shaped cloud, and I was looking at it, and I go, "Hey, it looks like a UFO. It just looked perfect. It was coming straight towards me. I didn't think much about it. I'm looking around, doing my thing, and then I start to see the clouds getting closer and closer, and the city lights are bouncing off of the underbelly of the clouds, so I could see it lit up really well. And then once it went right over my head, I'm looking at it. I don't think much of it. I decided to look down, and my whole backyard lit up bright blue, like just it was daytime. Okay, it was like noon for like a second or two. And I remember I felt this little tap on my head, like if you took your finger and tapped yourself on the head when that light came on. And I lived close to a cemetery. Now, at nighttime, you can't see any tombstones, it's just pitch black. But that second, when I jerked my head up, I could see everything. I could see all tombstones, all trees. I could see from the horizon to this
Like
horizon.
lightning striking, or right?
No, it was noon,
Uh,
daytime,
wow.
daytime, blue skies. It was noon.
Jeez.
That's all I can say. It's like 1:30 in the morning, noon, for like a couple of seconds. And like I said, I felt this tap on my head, and I jerked back up my head to look up, and of course the cloud's being still. It's right there, but inside the cloud is this donut-shaped UFO. Hey, it looked like it had windows around it. It wasn't hollow through the center, but it did have like a depression that went up in it, and it was solid. It was metallic, and the windows or whatever I want to call it is where that light came from. And I remembered when I looked up, I watched the light retract like a curtain or like water go back up into that donut shaped craft where those windows are, and then a cloud. And the cloud
Unreal.
stayed there and it didn't move. And I stood out in that backyard for 30, 40 minutes looking up at this cloud and watching when the cloud would start to lose a little bit of its fluff, on the corner ends, a little bit more to be generated to fill out the other side to make it perfect. And my reaction was, I think I jumped in excitement. I wasn't scared. I think I gave a thumbs up. I don't know if it's the military playing games. Hey, let's fly by and fly our high tech craft over this UFO enthusiast house and shine a light down on them. Or it was them. Like I said, I didn't feel a feeling, but I'm down there trying to figure out what this is. Then the cops start coming through my neighborhood. Whole bunch of cops. And
Really?
one parked right outside my front yard. And I remember looking through the fence and I was thinking, I think they saw it. I'm going to go out and talk to them and tell them what I saw. But part of me said, "Don't you do it," because he's probably going to think you have something to do with this, and he, he might throw you in jail or something. Part of me, I just didn't go out and talk, but I know that with all the cops circling the neighborhood, they saw it too. You know,
Or someone
that
reported it. Someone reported it locally.
I think they were probably on the ship. I'm telling you, the whole town was daytime, noon. I looked all the way from the horizon. It was daytime. It's like the whole globe. It's like go outside right now. That's what it looked like. It was bright. It was all in about 2 seconds. And to me, it's right above my head. I was observing it when it was coming towards me. I don't want to sound, what's the word, ego or whatever, but to me, what I want to say is I think it was saying hi, and that's it. Like, we're watching you. I know who you are. I didn't get no telepathic communication or anything like that, but that little tap on the head, if you take your finger and just tap yourself like a little thump, it was
Mm-hmm.
like, look up. Whatever it hit the top of my head, and
Wow.
that's it. That's all I can say. That's probably from the March 20th, 1996, and this sighting were the two best sightings out of my whole life that I'll never forget. The rest of it, I've had a lot in between that were strange, where I wanted to see a UFO really bad, and it showed up. You know,
Hmm. Wow.
uh,
So
more
this
than once.
this particular one, I know it was like you said 1 or 1:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
Did you feel like you wanted to get witnesses?
No,
Hmm.
no, from past experience in life, no, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And actually, the point of it, I felt like I said, the ego part, that it was meant for me and me only. As and that's what I was thinking during that time. But I will share that experience with anybody, and of course, no eyewitnesses, so that one's not, But that's what happened, and that was in August of 2008. So that's those two. I usually talk about the March 20th, 1996, because I have eyewitnesses, but that one was just as spectacular because it was close. That one I talked about in the beginning was 100 feet off the ground. Okay, this could have been 200 feet, but it's still close encounter of the first kind. It's 500 feet or less, so it's right up close. Also, it could be a CE5. If you want to categorize that, there's like a transformation, but I've already had the experience. So to me, this wasn't my first rodeo, and it wasn't like I'm going to react a certain way. It's just it happened again, and just to take it all in as much as you can, because they usually don't. They usually for a few seconds and it's gone. But I knew when that cloud was above me, it was still inside there. I just couldn't see it. I
Wow. Because
saw it with that light.
there has been speculations about clouds and
Mm,
UFOs like hiding in the clouds, which actually would be a very stealth way to do to do that. The bizarre part, I think, the bizarre part is it lighting up the sky that bright. What could that possibly have been about? Did it need to take a picture? That was a flash for a
right.
picture.
I thought this is when it happened. The first thought to pop in my mind is going, that is powerful,
Yeah,
just power. That's old. I mean, it was just that's what I was thinking. Whatever that thing is, it is powerful. It's like you just lit up the whole sky. You just turned the light switch on like it's daytime.
yeah.
Turned night into day. It's unbelievable.
There are so many people that report seeing like some type of craft that has windows, like
Yeah, it looked like it had windows
yeah,
around the side, but that could have been. I'm thinking the engine or not engine, but that's where the light came out of. Was out of those little square windows around the rim of the donut. You know,
yeah.
all the way around. I don't know how many, but they were evenly spaced rectangular windows, and
And
that's where the blue light. And the light was strange on itself. It wasn't like regular light. It was more like a curtain. I don't know how to explain it. It was controlled light. How about that?
hmm,
They controlled the light and pulled it back. So I watched the light go back inside those. I know it was really quick, but my brain was catching all of it. I could just remember it all seeping back in, like
Wow.
the brightness. Like when it dimmed its light down, I could see the windows. But it was a solid metal, dull metal craft,
Wow.
100% solid.
Wow. So, did you ever like reflect back on, you had the childhood thing, which your father said was a meteor.
Hmm.
Then you had, these fantastic sightings. Um, did you think that there was some relationship to all of them together?
During that time, yes, but going through my life, no, I would never put all that together. I had to meet other MUFON people. There's a guy by the name, you should interview him. His name is Dr. Joseph Burks, and he specializes in these type of ongoing cases in people like contactees. Um, he was telling me I fit the criteria of a prime contactee because the ability to want to see a sighting, go outside, meditate, or do whatever you do, and it shows up, you know, and then a couple other things in my life. So during that moment when I had that happen to me, he already was telling me you're going to have more. I already knew I was ready for seeing another one, so it wasn't a surprise to me. But I think if I never got that, um, let's say knowledge, but knew about that this happens to a lot of people. It's not. I'm not special. It's nothing special. It happens to many, many, many people out there, and these are the characteristics of it starts in their early life and it goes all the way through. Like I've never seen an alien or a being or anything like that, but I've seen these craft come up close up and personal, and I felt things like I knew they were coming, and then they'd show up, and it's a good feeling. It's not a bad feeling. It's like love, like you could
Hmm.
is the best way to describe it, like an intense love, like maybe if you were a baby and your mom was holding you,
Hmm.
you know,
Wow.
it's the most like it's joy, intense love, but love is different. It's something in that category. That's best way I can describe it. It was always been a positive feeling. It was never negative. No fear, happiness, um, and a longingness for connection.
Wow. You know who described that
Mm-mm.
just about exactly like that is one of the brothers, the Jack and Jim. I can't remember their last name in the Allagash incident. Um,
Uh,
the Allagash incident
Not
was,
familiar, or
yeah,
maybe I heard of it. And
it's an incredible possible abduction that happened in the Allagash in Maine. Many years, I think, in the 70s. And I heard an interview with Jack, and they're about recurring things happening, and that's what he described it. He said it was like he said he was almost embarrassed to describe it, but he said there was like an intense love, which I kind of blew me away to hear him say that, especially because we're quite hostile. You look at ourselves now and our complete history of mankind, we're very hostile, and while we're on that topic, what do you think, because we are hostile, that we're not making more of a connection if these things are actually visiting us from somewhere? Do you think that's all part of it?
I can't. I was starting to think, intelligent species a lot more smart than us probably don't think like us. But
Yeah.
if we had a group of humans out there, let's say like you and me, let's talk about a neighborhood. And say your next door neighbor and it's just us. He has a shotgun and he's shooting it off in his backyard constantly. He's over at his property, but you got kids and stuff running around. You kind of don't want to. You kind of want to keep that neighbor over there. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And if we're detonating nukes and killing our own kind, and you would sit back and observe. If we're not a threat, it's not a big deal. If we were a threat, it probably would be a big deal. But we probably, if we're start to leave this planet and we can't go pull a Cortez on
Right.
other planets out there. I guarantee you, there's probably going to be something out there that's going to be like, no, no, you ain't going to do that. So they probably observe us, but we're probably not a threat at all. They would. They're the secret keepers. It's
Yeah.
not the government. They're the ones keeping the secrets. They wanted to show they could show themselves they wanted to. I
Yeah.
think they're cautious. I think they're cloaked. I think they're up there all the time. And I do. from my own experience, I've seen them hide in clouds. Uh, I think they hold all the cards. Uh, that intense us being hostile, that might just be part of our human nature. It's kind of like if your neighbor is a sex offender or a murderer, we're judging them. We're like, that's a
Yeah.
bad person. But probably for them, my best guess is that's just a human thing. That's just what humans do. If you watch a nature show and see what animals do, that's just what the tiger does. That's just,
Yeah.
and maybe they judge us on that, or maybe there's no judgment. But I can't think how they would think if they're,
Yeah. That's
hell, it
right.
could just be one gigantic hoax, and these are all our crafts. It's a big psyop. We can go on the one if, what if scenarios, but
Yeah.
that feeling of love, the reason why I say like a child, because I do have a memory of me being a baby and looking up at my mother and the big giant head and thinking what the most beautiful woman this is, and that love connection.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this UFO thing was different from that, but very, very close. Um,
Interesting. Wow.
yeah, it's a feeling I feel here, like in my chest and in my stomach. And I've had another experience where I was driving down the road and I felt it, and I go, they're here. And I looked up at this star, and I had another person in the car with me, and I said, I'm guessing it's that. And the star did a check mark. It went check, and it took off.
Wow.
And it got tinier, 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 tinier. But I had that feeling. I'm just driving on the road talking about normal things, not even think about UFOs or anything. I get the feeling, and I go, hey, you know that feeling I've been telling you about? I think they're here right now. Look. And then she witnessed it. By the time we looked up, it was staying perfectly. Well, we looked at it for about a minute, and then we saw it go do a check mark. It went down, and then when it took off, it looked like it got tiny, but it's actually going so far away so fast that it
Yeah.
was getting tiny. I
Wow.
see as far as I could see it before it disappeared, but it was at a stop. It went from stop to extreme acceleration.
Now,
Yeah.
here's something I've asked a lot of guests, and just to get your take on it, and that is, if it's possible that there is a ton of, uh, you know, say billions, or we'll say even millions, down to that little, of intelligent life out there on different planets. Why us? Why do you think they would, if it's actually extraterrestrial visiting us? Why would we be so spectacular that we'd be visited if there's many, many, many other planets out there with life on it, intelligent life? Why would they
So
come here?
I think we are under the assumption that they're far away because that's what we're educated by NASA.
Yeah.
It's too far away to get here,
Yeah.
and we got that mindset, and that's probably not the right mindset. I think the way that my guess is their technology doesn't matter where they are in the universe.
Yeah.
It's like a cell phone. I can talk to you right now. I can come here right now. I can slip in, slip out, change time. I can manipulate time just from other cases. I can go through that of a case where, real quick, I'll just tell you real quick.
Sure.
Somebody sees a UFO over a house. Okay, the next day they go out there, the house isn't there, but he's sure it was right here above the house. And then 15 years later, the house gets built,
Hmm.
and it's the exact house from what the guy remembered many years ago of the sighting. So
Wow.
so he's actually probably saw the future, if you want to believe the guy's story, and whatever it was manipulating something during that time that that makes sense. He was driving through a neighborhood that didn't exist yet, but he swear it was there, and he remembered the house, and he remembered the UFO above it, and then years later, that house is built the exact way he remembered it. When he was driving through memory lane saying it was really weird. I remember something, and they built that house. So obviously, and then of course, missing time.
Yeah.
People being no memory, back in their car. I don't know. I think we're getting off the subject. You asked me a question about.
Yeah. No, no, no. I think this is a. I said, why us? Why are we so
Okay,
spectacular that we're
so
being
yeah,
visited?
thank you. So I don't think we're that important. We're probably just.
Neither do I.
I don't think that we're that important. I think they would study trees, plants, anything. It's just your consciousness happens to be directing in that area. You looked up, hey, is that what? And then they might interact with you. But I think they've been coming and going for a long time. Um, Heck, they might actually even be here on the planet. They might be underground, underwater. They might not be coming from anywhere. This could be their home too, and we're coexisting. Just like you have ants in your backyard, but you don't tell, and they're in your territory, but you don't talk to them.
Hmm.
You go around and you do your business. I might think it might be something like that. I don't think we're that important. I mean, I know it's sad,
Yeah.
but not sad like hey, we want to invite you into the cosmic family and give you our technology and you can go do the Star Trek and all that kind of stuff. I think we're way off on what's really going on, and once we figure it out, it'll probably all make sense.
Yeah.
I think we're just like farm animals, or not farm animals, but rodents in a forest.
Yeah.
As a human that's passing through to go do whatever they want to do. I think they're indifferent and they're coming and going. I would recommend that you don't. They can become hostile, but usually from our experience, from cases and stuff, they become hostile when we try to attack it.
Yeah.
Someone has a gun that shoots, pilot locks on missiles. So I would recommend if you ever see one, don't point your weapon at it and don't ever go under it because I've always, from my experience and from other cases, Travis Walton, that you can get hurt by being under a UFO. So you don't want to take chances with it. You want to stay back. You can observe. But yeah, I would say that most of them are harmful, but don't take chances with UFOs. Don't point your weapon at it. Don't go under it. Don't go touch the craft. You don't know what's going on. And that would be my best advice. And as for agendas and what they think of us, my best bet is they're indifferent.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah. It's and what about how do you view the government may I don't want to say handle the situation, but do you think the government has any more information? I personally think that they probably know they exist, but don't know what they are. You know,
that's always been, I'm with you on that. I know you hear stories about a secret space program and we're with the aliens and we're out there doing all this. It sounds awesome. I think they're it's just not scared, but if they've learned something more that we don't know about, and they're not telling us, they might know a little bit more than what we know, but just as lost as you and I am to figuring out what the agenda is. Probably different races, probably different. It's hard to tell what an agenda is. It's not just one thing coming.
yeah,
Could be a group of scientists from somewhere coming to check it out. Could be a probe. It could be an organic life form that looks like a ship.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I've heard crazy stories about soldiers that come up on a crashed UFO many different occasions, and they would want to know what's inside the UFO, and the door would open up for them.
hmm.
Want to know what's inside? It just opens up. You know, it's like linked to the mind. Like
Yeah.
they don't need keys, they don't lock their doors, but I want to get inside. Door opens up. And from what was the guy's name? Colonel Philip J. Corso. You know that guy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's not alive now, but he said that the navigational system, the computer of the ship, was the being itself.
Hmm.
The ship
Wow.
responded to the being's commands. The being was the navigation, everything. I want to go here. I want to go here. So it was almost like an empty shell, no moving parts. They had wires that were embedded into the walls, but it was more like fiber optics,
Yeah.
like what we have now. But really couldn't re-engineer the craft. It's just an eggshell. The
Yeah.
most important thing was the being itself.
Wow,
That's
that's
what powered the
interesting.
craft.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, there's you just mentioned fiber optics, and I know that's one of the speculative things that they're supposed to have re-engineered from something that was found at some point. I don't know what I think about all that. And it just seems like if somewhere there are these crashed saucers being stowed away in some hangar, like Hangar One, or someplace like that, that it seems like eventually the word would get out.
Yeah, I
What
would
do you
think
think
so
about
too.
that? Do you
It
think
could
that
be
could be
total
kept secret?
disinformation.
Yeah.
I think you and me are on the same page. I don't think Uncle Sam has a clue what's going on. I
Yeah.
think they know they're real, but that's about as far as it goes. We know we see them, we observe them, but they do circles around our fighter jets. We can never pin them down.
Right.
And having some of them crash here just doesn't seem, I guess they make mistakes too, but you travel all the way across the cosmos or slipping in and out of dimensions or whatever they're doing. Um, I doubt if we had a ship that crashed, somebody would come rescue them, I'm pretty sure, and take all the evidence away from us, clean it up.
Yeah.
And if they can take your memories away, then I guess they can do that too. And you never know it even happened,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think people have argued that maybe they encountered something that they weren't expecting, and that's the reason they crash. Like radar waves or whatever it is. Um, who knows? That is kind of a really good skeptical argument. Why would they travel all this way and crash? I understand the argument totally, and
Um, I really can't. It's just this is from what we hear. We're repeating things from what we've heard. It's not our own personal experience, and we
yeah,
haven't seen the data, and we haven't held it in our hands.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
we haven't touched it, but you hear from others, and we as you people that talk about stories, kind of like the gossip, the gospel. We're saying, yeah, Roswell happened, all this stuff, but I wasn't there. I didn't get to touch the metallurgy. I would love to, please. I would love to see this stuff.
yeah,
But I can only, it's like I have people ask me, have you met an alien? Well, you have all these UFO sightings. Yeah, I know UFOs are real. I don't know what they are.
yeah.
That's about the honest answer I can give. And I wouldn't be surprised if Uncle Sam would probably say the same thing. UFOs are real. We track them. We don't know what they are. Been watching them for a long time.
Now I know we met at the MUFON event, and I know you, like myself, we came in late. I came in late because of the traffic, but I
Mhm.
did watch the on YouTube Luis Elizondo talk. I watched that, and basically he is saying, wait till this time next year. It's going to be a whole different world this time next year, or something along those lines. Do you think that he is well? What's your thoughts on that? Do you think he's actually going to be releasing things, or have you been following that?
He told Jan Harzan um, when someone, I think one of the questions was, this is going to answer your question. He said if it wasn't for MUFON, ATIP would have never been formed.
Hmm.
Now, why would you got to be kidding me? The Pentagon should have a UFO program before civilians have a UFO program. But they used the MUFON database, it showed it to Congress, Senator Reid, and they're like, well, look at all this data. We need to have our own program. And I'm pretty sure there's other programs going on that deal with UFOs that no one knows about.
Mm-hmm.
But from his program that he worked for, ATIP, he also told Jan that, well, the reason why we're all coming up now is there's a situation. He said a situation has come up, and
Wow.
he wouldn't elaborate on it.
Well, that's kind of interesting. I
Yep.
I haven't
And
didn't
that's
hear
kind of
that
like
part
what
of
you're
it.
saying, and that's all that I know. Where he's leading to, I have no idea. I know he said he couldn't talk about it, but something has come up, and the reason for this push. The Pentagon's admitting that they were involved in UFOs, but they've been denying it for a while. The Blue Book.
Right. Well, I had Stanton Freeman on my show the week after the Pentagon came out to get his take, and one of the first things he said is, you know how we talked. My question is, why now?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a great question. Why
Why now?
why now? So
There's got to be a reason.
yeah, which
It's more harm to put your face on the line to come out and do this push
hmm,
than it is just keep your mouth shut and just keep the status quo going the way it is.
yeah,
So, but he did say a situation has come up. He's not allowed to talk about it, but that's why let's say that we can just use our imagination. Let's say something's coming and we can see it coming here, right?
yeah,
But you want to get the public ready, what would you do?
yeah,
You'd go to MUFON and say blah blah blah, and then get on your TV shows and kind of get people like Hangar One and all these UFO documentaries been going on the last 30 years, get people acclimated. So just in case the cat's out of the bag, it won't be that much of a jolt or shock to us,
yeah,
and we continue on to go back to work or whatever. It would be better that way to let you know that, hey, son, you're a foster kid, instead of pretending the illusion I'm your real dad and wait till you're a grown man and let you know, oh
yeah,
yeah, your parents it would be more less of a shock if you're acclimated,
Right.
right?
Hey, well, we ran out of time, Jeremy. Can you
Cool.
believe it? Wow.
No, that was a lot of fun, Martin.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was a great pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, you take care.
You too, sir. Bye.